In a previous episode, we ran through the dual battery system in the back of my vehicle and some of the electrical installations within the whole canopy setup. And I do strongly recommend that you go back and watch that episode before you get to this one. We've done quite a bit since then, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. But that forms the baseline of what we're going to be speaking about today. And unless you understand how that whole dual battery system works, you may not fully comprehend what I've done in the back. But let's get to it. I've got some new stuff here to show you, and I hope you learned something new today. Let's first speak about the spotlights and kind of just get that out the way, because I was kind of in two minds of whether to even get spotlights or not. I do consider it something that is really important if you are going to be driving a lot at night, just because your eyes will start to strain if you're tired after a long day of driving. And having something that just lights up a bit further, it's not only safer in terms of, let's say, spotting an animal in the road at distance, or a corner that you might not see if it's late at night and your normal spots aren't bright enough. But for someone like me who doesn't drive a lot at night, I was in two minds of whether it was even worth it or not. At the end of the day, I spent some time as a passenger in a friend's vehicle, and after seeing him drive with his spots for a while, he said to me, "Matt, I'm going to switch these off, show you the factory Hilux spotlights, and you tell me whether this is safe or not." And he switched off his spots, had his factory headlights or spotlights on, and I couldn't believe how much dimmer it was. And I realized after all, actually your eyes start getting tired. So I bit the bullet and got these. These are kind of entry-level spots. They are Hella Value Fit Supernovas. Hella's a German manufacturer that's been around for many decades. This is one of their spots that I believe is actually made in China, not in Germany. However, one thing I've learned from working with companies that have products made in China is that Chinese manufacturing can be brilliant if you are very strict with your tolerances and quality control. And these, I can say after owning them for a while, are built to really high standards and perform absolutely flawlessly, like your iPhone, which is also made in China. Alright, let's do a test. These are normal headlights without any high beams. These are my normal high beams. Not a massive difference actually. And then let's switch on the spot, shall we? There you go. So on a bit of a hill here, so you can't see it all the way out to distance, but I'm pretty happy with that. Let's try this again. Normal headlights. I'm going to turn on my fog lights. Can't really see much of a difference there. Normal spotlights and Hella Supernovas. I went with the 7-inch Hella Value Fits. They do also make them 6-inch and 9-inch. The 9-inch was a bit too big to fit over here, and I've also heard that they can disrupt the flow of air into your radiator, so I wanted to go for something slightly smaller. The 6-inch was maybe a little bit too small, so 7-inch was a great compromise. What's great about these, the beam I think is a really nice spread. You can see out of distance, but you can also see all around you quite well. It's not a super tight spotlight and not too wide either. I thought the spread was really good, and the color temperature as well. It's not too blue. It's got a higher color temperature, which your eye is actually able to adapt to better between light and dark. So if you have a more orange or red light and you have to switch those lights off, your eyes adapt much better to darkness after seeing a red light than it does seeing a colder color temperature. So that was something to consider as well. And then during the day, they've got these beams across the middle here, which are connected to your daytime running lights. So while you're driving, these little strips line up, and I just think that looks cool. It performs no function whatsoever, but it's nice to have. And then obviously on the inside of my vehicle, I have them wired up, so they're connected to my spots, so I can switch on my brights and these will come on, but I can also push a button and switch them off. And these are ECE approved. I think it's called ECE, which means that they are legal, road legal, whereas a lot of spotlights are not ECE approved. So do check that out before you go out onto the road with aftermarket lights. You may be breaking the law and you might have to pay for it, whereas I know I can rest at ease knowing that these are fully road legal. Now the spotlights, we're of course connected to the main battery. Everything else that I'm about to show you is connected to the auxiliary battery in the back. And the first thing to talk about is my compressor. As you can see, I have it mounted in this this cupboard over here on little rubber bushings, so over bumps and stuff it stays nice and firm and doesn't rattle around. And I've got this set up really nicely. My lithium battery, which is new, I used to have a lead acid battery prior to that. I made the decision to buy a lithium battery that had a high amp output. I think it has a 140 amp output. That allowed me to fit stuff like this, which is a heavy duty compressor that is a 40 amp compressor that does 160 liters per minute. So it draws a lot of amps, but has a high air output. And another important spec when choosing a compressor is how long can you run it for before it starts to overheat. This one, I can run it for like an hour before it becomes too hot to use, and that obviously is way more than enough than what you need for inflating and deflating tires regularly. I learned the hard way that you can buy a very, very cheap low capacity compressor and really suffer. I got one of those that plugs into your like a 12 volt output, and the current that it ran off was so low that it actually got to a point where it overheated before I could even inflate get my tire to the pressure I needed, and it just gave up. And that was basically a pointless compressor to have. I think it was made for small cars like little Chevrolet Sparks and stuff. If you're going to do 4x4ing and you're going to be driving on different terrain all the time, where you're driving on sand, you have to put your tires all the way down, driving on gravel, having a sort of intermediate pressure, and then driving on tar where your pressure is high, and you've got to keep changing, you're going to get so tired of a low output compressor. So I suggest getting something like this, which is high output. Obviously the best out there would be like an ARB double piston compressor. You can install it in your engine bay and have a hose coming out here or something. That's really expensive. I found that this one, which is the brand is Trail Boss, but I've also seen, I think Iron Man also uses the same compressor, just put their name on it. Extremely impressed with this, and I can run it all day and it works all the time. It's got a little trip switch, and I've got a 40 amp fuse connected to it as well, so I know that it's safe and it's going to do the job for me. Super happy with this. I should quickly show you, I did also get something called an Indeflate, which is it's a South African product, but it's sold as a Max Trax Indeflate in other countries. And essentially how this works is I've got my main hose, which plugs into the compressor, and then I've got these, which essentially equalizes your pressure between two tires. So it's got a quick disconnect fitting that clicks onto your valve. Put this on my one rear tire, put this on my other rear tire. It equalizes the pressure on a really high quality wicker gauge, and I can deflate my it actually still had air in it from previously. I can deflate my tires really fast, and I can obviously connect my compressors here and inflate them. And having your tires equalized is really important, because if one tire is more inflated than the other, you're going to have uneven wear between your two tires, and obviously uneven grip as well, and it's not safe, and your tires won't last. So something like this, not only does it speed up the whole deflating and inflating process, but it makes a big difference when it comes to ensuring that your pressures are exactly where they need to be. It only takes myself and Nicole, as when we work as a team, one of us connecting the tires, the other one at the compressor, communicating with each other. Takes us a couple minutes to inflate or deflate tires. Super quick, and makes driving on different terrains an absolute breeze. And from this position I can reach all four wheels no problem, so that's not even an issue. And now we move into the heart and soul of any overlanding setup, and that's the back. Let's talk about the lithium battery before we get to some of the other stuff, because I mentioned in my previous kind of electrical systems video that I've got a lead acid battery, and I eventually decided to bite the bullet and buy a lithium battery, simply because I was able to get a good one for like half price. Normally they're very expensive, but at half price, it's a bargain, because that thing is going to outlast your cheaper lead acid battery by a long mile.
And there's the old battery, weighs a ton, and the new battery, much lighter and should last much longer.
So I ended up buying a 100 amp hour Blue Nova lithium battery that had a high amp output. You get different grades of lithium batteries. Some have a low amp output, but I needed something with higher amps basically because of the compressor. That thing just chews amps. So 140 amp, I believe, is what this one puts out. And I've got all kinds of stuff connected to it. What makes a lithium battery better than a lead acid battery is, firstly, it can be discharged to a much lower capacity. So normal lead acid, you can use like maximum 50% of your capacity, and after that you actually really start damaging the battery. So even your 100 amp hour battery is only usable for 50 amp hours, and then you've got to charge it. Whereas a lithium battery, you can discharge it all the way to like 20% safely, and that gives you more use out of it. So despite being much lighter than a lead acid battery, I get more out of this. And because I've got a good DC-DC charger, watch my earlier video for more info on this, I could simply switch this to lithium mode from like a lead acid battery mode in my previous video, and it intelligently charges that lithium battery. So you're going to have to invest in something like this if you want to use a lithium battery. If you have your lead acid battery in the front and you simply have a cheap battery isolator, your lithium battery will not charge properly, but with a DC-DC charger, it will. Lithium batteries do also keep their voltage until the very last minute, and then suddenly it'll disappear. So it can be hard without a good battery monitor to know where they're at. You can't just look at your voltage output and determine how well charged your battery is. You actually have to have a proper battery monitor. This one on my battery box doesn't work too well, so at this point it's kind of guesswork. But I know I will get much more out of that battery than my standard lead acid battery. Challenges of a lithium battery. Okay, first challenge I faced straight away was my lead acid battery. I had one of those C-Tech battery chargers. If I was away for a long period of time, I could simply, the moment I get home, plug my battery into a wall socket and it would intelligently keep that battery charged. I can't use that on this battery, so I'm going to have to find another way to keep it topped up if I'm away for a long time. Just one of the downsides of a lithium battery. And then the other downside is I have that Goal Zero. Actually, let me just take you around, I'll show you. Remember that thing over there, that Goal Zero battery? Again, watch my previous video if you want to learn about it. But this thing is fantastic in that it's got a inverter, so I have a 220 volt output, and then all the USB, 12 volt, everything, and I can detach it from here and put it in somewhere else, and we can put it on a table to charge phones or cameras or whatever. So that's great to have. However, this, with a lead acid battery, I have a tethering port on the side, and I could simply keep this tethered and the voltage would equalize with a lead acid battery and charge whenever that charged. I had to purchase a 12 volt charger to charge this guy with, and I have to keep this cable here, and that cable runs all the way to somewhere here. Here it is, and I can switch between a 5 amp current and a 10 amp current if I want that battery to charge really quickly. But I just leave it on 5 amps. It kind of trickle charges and keeps that battery topped up. So problem solved, but it was one of those things. Lithium to lead acid, you have to think about how everything connects together. But I'm pretty happy with my setup right now. This whole setup has allowed me to do stuff that I never thought I would ever be able to do. Like, for example, going out in the middle of winter when it drops below zero and there's ice everywhere, and connecting an electric blanket to my rooftop tent upstairs and running the electric blanket all night. I've now, with a lithium battery, got enough charge throughout the night where it only depletes like maybe 20% of the battery overnight. If I have a solar panel, I can probably put all of that back in throughout the day. don't have one of those yet, but I've been able to camp 2 full nights in a row on the west coast with the fridge running the whole time, with lights running the whole time, and still get through 2 full nights with the electric blanket on full in the cold. And that's something that's really nice to have, especially if you want that little bit of extra comfort in the winter. The last thing I want to speak about in this video is something that kind of came out of necessity, and I've just added it last minute. While Nicole and I were camping on the west coast, we realized that these lights around here were not really ideal when it comes to cooking and stuff, and that you actually need portable lights that stay charged all the time. So here is my solution. This battery box that I've got in here has 2 USB outputs, which are pretty much useless because they sit quite deep and they are quite difficult to access. And I don't use them because I've got my Goal Zero on the side, which obviously provides USB output for charging phones and cameras and stuff. So I've run USB cables to here, and I've got these 2 magneto lights which are plugged in to charge at any given time, but connected with Velcro. So when I'm done with my drive, I can take them off and I can Velcro them up here for cooking, or I can Velcro them somewhere else, or I can simply stand with them and hold them out. Or they have a USB output as well, so I can use these as a power bank up in the rooftop tent for charging phones overnight. So super convenient to have that battery power on demand, easy to recharge. Both of those magneto lights sit there, and these were dirt cheap. It was like 130 Rand for one of these, which is what, like $6 or $7 I think. So completely worth it, and nothing you can't do with a little bit of Velcro. Works very, very well. And that's where we're going to bring this one to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure I will be adding more electrical stuff in the future, but for now I think I'm pretty happy with the way this is set out, and there's not really anything I can think off the top of my head that I would need to add right now. So I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.